Welcome to the Heidi Thorne Show. I'm your host, Heidi Thorne, and in this podcast I share my real-world self-publishing and small business experience with you. Before we get started, I just want to remind you to like, comment, share, follow, and subscribe. Now let's get on with today's show. Warning: if even the mere mention of mature, offensive, controversial, or disturbing topics will trigger negative or upsetting feelings and thoughts for you, then please stop listening or watching right now. That's my trigger warning for this episode, where I'll discuss what authors need to know about trigger warnings for books and other content. I'm in 7th or 8th grade library class one day in the early 1970s. One of the girls in my class is scheduled to give a book report on a book of her choice. Her choice is The Exorcist, a novel about demonic possession. Instead of just giving a brief summary of the story plot and her opinion about the book, she decides to read the most gory and disturbing passages from the book to the class. I'm feeling totally sick from being forced to listen to this. I went home at lunch and didn't go back that afternoon. Growing up in a very disciplined Protestant Christian home, I didn't know how to tell my mom what I had just experienced, since I knew it would totally freak her out. I just told her I might have the flu. I couldn't sleep that night either. I eventually got over it. As a more mature reader today, discussion of this topic doesn't even disturb me, and I even enjoy paranormal and horror genre content. But let's consider that I still remember that incident now around 50 years later. If you're familiar with the history of either the Exorcist book or film, you know how much controversy it aroused when it came out. The visceral reaction to the film included vomiting and fainting for some movie watchers, though you have to question if early reports of these reactions primed later audiences to react similarly. A new MPAA movie rating system, which had just been introduced a few years earlier in 1968, gave the movie an R rating for mature audiences, though there were some critics who said that it should have received an even more restrictive rating of X. Given its controversy and looking back at this incident, I cannot believe that our teacher even allowed this student to do a book report complete with graphic and explicit detail on a book that was intended for mature 18-plus aged audiences, not a bunch of 12 to 13-year-olds. I am not advocating for censorship or banning of books, which is such a political and ideological hot-button issue. Rather, I'm an advocate for including appropriate trigger warnings in books and other content in an effort to set expectations and be respectful of your readers, and to help avoid negative feedback to your work. So what exactly is a trigger warning? A trigger warning is a statement that warns consumers about content that contains elements that might be disturbing or inappropriate for sensitive or young audiences, often noting what those elements are. Those elements might include the following, which is a long list, and it's not even an exhaustive list: blood and gore, violence and assault of any kind, physical, emotional, or mental abuse, war or other traumatic historical events, animal cruelty, mental health issues, paranormal and the occult, swearing and profanity, crude humor, sexual themes, situations and descriptions, explicit or suggestive, weapons, bodily functions, smoking, drug or alcohol use, medical conditions and procedures, negative or stereotypical depictions of race, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, or disabilities. Flickering, flashing, or blinking content in video that can cause seizures for some people with conditions such as epilepsy. Trigger warnings sound pretty much like MPAA, which is now the MPA, ratings for movies, and parental advisory labels for explicit and profane music lyrics, right? Well, It pretty much has the same function, though a primary function of the MPA and PAL ratings are geared as a guide for parents to use when deciding on age-appropriate content for their children. Trigger warnings can be for readers or content consumers of any age who may be disturbed by exposure to any of these elements due to their past life experiences, traumatic events, or beliefs. What if your book is for mature audiences? Do you still need trigger warnings? Just because your audience is mature, either chronologically or intellectually, it doesn't mean that they couldn't be disturbed by situations, characters, or other elements in your book that could cause them distress. Books that are considered adult content are not the same as content for an adult reading level. Adult content generally means content that is inappropriate for minors. You need to indicate that when you upload it to KDP. Amazon wants to make sure that adult content is not shown to young or sensitive audiences. One of the more difficult age issues is classifying YA, or young adult work. It's in that gray age area. You don't want Amazon to show it as appropriate for children, for any audience younger than adult. Be clear in your book description what age group your content is for. For example, age 3 to 8. That will help parents decide if your book is right for their children. On KDP, you can enter your age range for juvenile and education book categories. There are currently 5 levels, starting with baby to age 2, going up to 7th to 12th grade, or ages 13 to 18. So what about diversity and inclusion issues, and how do they relate to this? I'm not going to delve too far into the topic of diversity and inclusion as they relate to trigger warnings. It is such an expansive topic that warrants deeper conversation. However, I do want to make mention of how entertainment giant Disney is handling content from their vast historical archive that includes stereotypical and disparaging depictions. The beginning of these movies now includes an unskippable warning about the inclusion of negative depictions and mistreatment of people or cultures. Is that enough? Should Disney remake these classics? Again, I cannot, within the span of this discussion, even hope to scratch the surface of this issue. But I did want to point out that even the most powerful of content creators are struggling with how to handle trigger warnings. We all need to be aware of the impact of what we offer and share. Where should you put a trigger warning? Your trigger warnings should appear before your book or content begins. Ideally, it would be on a separate page just prior to the start of your book, but before your readers even get to the start of your book. Trigger warnings and age-appropriate information should appear somewhere in your book's description and promotions. But won't trigger warnings turn off readers from even checking out a book? A trigger warning is like an ingredients label. If you have a health issue, you're a label reader when you go to the grocery store or a restaurant. If you see that a product contains an ingredient that makes you ill or aggravates your health issue, you can easily decide that it's not a product for you. While other people may be even more attracted to a product if it contains certain ingredients. Same situation with books. Not warning readers of what to expect can result in bad book reviews, bad PR, or even returns for refunds. If readers unknowingly dive into your book and then later become distraught by what they experience, they may decide to express their anger far and wide on social media. Do you really want to deal with that? Let's be clear. You can write whatever you want to write, but with creative freedom comes responsibility. While you cannot control how anyone will react to your content, you can control how you present your work to the world so that they can decide if it is right for them. I hope you found that helpful, and if you did, please rate, review, and subscribe to The Heidi Thorne Show on whatever podcast app you like to use. I'm on all the major ones, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you like the YouTube video better, you just have to subscribe to my Heidi Thorne YouTube channel and turn on the notification bell so you get an alert when a new video is up. I would appreciate it if you would share either the audio or the video with your friends on social media. My self-published books are available on Amazon, Audible, and Apple Books. All you have to do is go to one of those sites, type in my name, and a list of all the available titles will be shown to you. If you'd like to connect with me, my website is HeidiThorn.com, and I'm most active on the social channels of Instagram and TikTok at Heidi Thorn. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. I'll look forward to talking with you again in the next episode, and in the meantime, have a great day.